Hi everyone, today we're going to be talking about additive inverse. So make sure you have your notes loaded here in GoodNotes and they look like this, and we'll go ahead and get started right away. The first thing that we need to talk about is a quick review of absolute value. Okay, hopefully everyone remembers what absolute value means, and that is the distance a number is from 0 on a number line. So let's go ahead and write that down. The distance a number is from 0 on a number line. Okay, so let me show you a real quick example. Go ahead and draw a number line. And whenever we have a number line, the 0 is in the middle. Let's just go 2, 3, 4, 5. And when we go to the left of 0, of course, the numbers are negative. -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. Okay, if it takes you a little longer to draw your number line, that's no problem. Go ahead, make sure you pause the video, and so that you have really good notes to look back on. So let's say we want to figure out what the absolute value of 4 is. Well, first of all, the symbol for absolute value looks like this. It's like two bigger lines outside of the number. So we would find 4 on the number line, and then we would say how many units is that from 0? 1, 2, 3, 4. So the absolute value of 4 is 4. Now if we tried to figure out the absolute value of -4, we would start at -4 on the number line, and we would see how many spaces do we have to move to get to 0. Okay, so that was 1, 2, 3, 4. So the absolute value of -4 would also be 4. Okay, and the reason that is because distance can never be negative. Okay, if you think about how far you were running or biking, the distance that you're traveling, if you were to measure that, that always has to be a positive number. Okay, so hopefully that's a review and you guys remember what absolute value is. And now we're going to move on to a new word called additive inverse. Now additive inverse, the way I always think of it, it's kind of a fancy way of just saying opposite. Okay, so that's the best way to try to remember it. And I'll show you what I mean here. Okay, so again, additive inverse means opposite. So for example, let's say we have the number 5. Well, the additive inverse, or the opposite of 5, would be -5. So for the number 5, the additive inverse is -5. Okay? And the other thing that the additive inverse tells us, the reason we know that is true, because if we added those two things together, we would always get 0. So 5 plus -5 equals 0. Okay? Let's try one more. Let's say we need to know the additive inverse of -8. Okay, so now if we're starting with a negative, the opposite of -8 would be a +8. We're thinking, what number can I add to -8 to get to 0? Okay, so the additive inverse of -8 is 8. Okay, sorry about that. So we could say -8 plus 8 equals 0. Okay, so maybe you're wondering, when do we use this? Okay, well, let's talk about a couple quick examples. The first example would be when you are dealing with money. Okay, so let's think about if you have like a checkbook. Now, this might be a newer concept because I know in 6th grade not everybody has a checkbook, but it's really good to sort of learn the basics of money and how this works. So in your checkbook, we have two words. We would say a credit. And a credit is kind of like when you add money to your account. So if you work, if you babysit, you have a job, and you get paid, and you put that money into your account. Okay, that's going to be money added. And a debit, think of that as money taken away. So money taken away. Okay, again, if you're having trouble keeping up with how quickly I'm writing, that's no problem. Just pause the video and make sure you get this all down in your notes. Okay, so again, when you have a checkbook, the credit means that you're adding money to your account, and a debit means you're taking money away. So let's say that you were babysitting and you earned $30, okay? And you went ahead and you put that $30 into your checking account, and you now have 30, you just started it, so you now have $30 in your account. Okay, what debit would make that zero? Okay, so if you have $30, what debit would make your account zero? Okay, so in other words, what is the additive inverse of 30? Okay, this is a real life example of when we would use the additive inverse. So the opposite of the $30 credit would be a $30 debit. Okay, and we could write that as negative $30. Okay, let's try another example of this is in football. Okay, so, oops. Now, for those of you who are familiar with football, basically, let's say that, well, of course, my favorite team is the Packers. So let's say the Packers make a 20-yard gain. Okay. What would have to happen to, okay, so if the Packers make a 20-yard gain, to get back to the line of scrimmage, they would have to have a 20-yard loss. So the additive inverse of 20 would be negative 20, okay? So in football, if the team makes a 20-yard gain, to get back to where they started, it would be a 20-yard loss, because 20 plus negative 20 equals 0. That's the additive inverse. Okay, there's just, I know I don't have another page here, but if you can add one more page in GoodNotes. And I just want to talk about one more thing, because students seem to usually get this concept. They understand what the additive inverse is. It just means taking the opposite, but then they see a fraction or they see a decimal and they start freaking out. Okay, do not freak out if you see a fraction or a decimal. So let's say you have negative 7/9, and we have to find the additive inverse. Okay. Okay, the first thing I want to do is quickly show you this on the number line. Okay, a lot of students get confused about where this number would be on the number line. So we're going to put the 0 in the middle, and I'm going to make it a little bigger than the last one. Let's say this is a 1 and a 2. And when I go to the left, of course, the numbers get negative. So this would be a negative 1 and a negative 2. Negative 7/9 is a number between 0 and negative 1. Okay, on the number line, it would be right about here, negative 7/9. Okay, if it were negative 9/9, we know that 9/9 would simplify down to 1. So negative 9/9 would be negative 1, but we only have 7/9. So we're pretty close to the negative 1, but not all the way there. Okay, so the additive inverse of negative 7/9 means, what do I need to add to negative 7/9 to get to 0? Okay, and that would be positive 7/9. So again, I just don't want anyone to be confused because they see a fraction. It works the same way. Okay, the opposite of negative 7/9 is a positive 7/9. Let's say we have the 37/100. Okay, and we need to find the additive inverse or opposite. Okay, that means, what number can we add to 37/100 to get to 0? And the answer would be negative 37/100. Okay, I hope that helps. And if you have any questions about this, please make sure that you ask somebody in your group or let your teacher know. Otherwise, if you feel comfortable with this, make sure your notes are complete and you can go ahead and complete the note check. Thanks for watching.